Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
For over 35 years, Corporate Direct has been helping entrepreneurs and investors protect their assets and build real wealth. Founded by Garrett Sutton, a best-selling author and advisor to Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad team, Corporate Direct provides professional asset protection, high-quality incorporation services, and strategic advice for real estate and investments. Corporate Direct also assists clients in meeting compliance requirements under the Corporate Transparency Act, ensuring federal reporting is handled with ease and accuracy. Anyone ready to start a business or protect their investments can call 1-800-600-1760 for a free 15-minute consultation or visit corporatedirect.com to learn more. Remember, call 1-800-600-1760. Corporate Direct, your trusted partner in business success. Welcome back to Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. I'm your host, Dr. Disha Spath, and today we have an incredible and inspiring guest who's reshaping the way we think about work-life balance, achievement, and fulfillment. Dr. Baker is a physician, writer, speaker, and lifestyle design coach behind Practice Balance. She's the author of the book Lean Out, a professional woman's guide to finding authentic work-life balance, and the host of the Lean Out podcast. Dr. Baker empowers professionals, especially women, to step off the treadmill of relentless achievement, rediscover their true selves, and cultivate a life of balance that's uniquely their own. Dr. Baker also brings her expertise as a certified yoga and meditation instructor and her passion for off-the-grid living, homeschooling, fitness, and travel into her work. Today, we'll dive into her story, her book, and how her lessons can transform your life. Dr. Baker, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here and to see you again.
I know it's been so long. I truly enjoy seeing you at conferences, and I feel like we're in the same circuit. And I'm so glad I could get you on my podcast today to share your wisdom, because I've loved all of the live lectures that you've done.
Thank you.
Well, before we start, for people that don't know you, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey of stepping off the traditional treadmill of achievement?
Sure. So currently, I am practicing anesthesiology clinically part-time. I do per diem and locum tenens work only. This is something that has evolved over my career. I worked as an academic and yet part-time physician for about 10 or 11 years before I decided to make this change. And I mainly did it because we wanted to move to a rural area and to start a homestead. It's been a dream of my husband's. When COVID happened, it just seemed like the right time to do that because, yes, we do love travel, as I had mentioned in my bio, but traveling internationally at that time was a little difficult. So we started looking for property. So we have an 80-acre homestead in the Alpine Mountains of southern Utah. So it's not in the desert, it's in a high altitude area. And in order for me to continue working, I do need to travel to do my work to a city center or, fly somewhere. And I have been doing that on a very part-time basis. So I have gone from working 3 or 4 days a week in the beginning of my career, which, I always wanted to work part-time, to working now about 1 week a month, sometimes 2 weeks a month, depending on the week or on the month. And I fill my non-clinical time with spending time with my family, helping my daughter with, as you mentioned, homeschooling, and doing fitness pursuits of my own. I've been doing a lot of strength training recently. I teach yoga locally. And I also coach other physicians and professionals on work-life balance and career transition, aside from just doing my podcast.
Wow. So you say you only work a week a month, but it sounds like you're doing a whole lot and keeping it all balanced. So let's talk about this book that you wrote, which is another thing you did on your off time. You wrote the book Lean Out, which presents an intriguing counterpoint to the lean in philosophy. Can you share what motivated you to challenge this lean in perspective?
Yeah. Well, to step back even further, I have wanted to write a book for a really long time and I could not figure out what to write it about. I didn't want it to just be a memoir. However, I have had some dramatic things happen to me, which I can explain in a moment. But I, one time a few years ago, came across that book, and I know it's relatively older. It's been around for about 10 years, maybe a little longer. But when I read it, I was like, man, I do not agree with any of this at
Hmm.
all. And I realized that I had been living my life completely antithetical to that book. And so I decided that this was what I wanted to focus on for my book. I wanted it to have more of a message than just talking about my story. I wanted to infuse my story of burnout, of getting sick during residency and having a big cancer scare, and the wake up call that that gave me in order to live my life based on my values and not just keep going on that treadmill. But I wanted to also give lessons to people. And so I used lean in as the foil, saying, are we really happier, especially as women? The book has a lot of information for men and women, but women professionals, are we happier, healthier, more fulfilled based on the lean in culture or not? And I argue that we aren't.
So, for listeners that might not be familiar with the Lean In book, can you please introduce us to the concepts that really triggered you and made you not like the book?
Yes. Okay. So one of the things is that she talks a lot about going, and saying yes to everything and just taking a break when a break is needed. I remember that quote in the book. It was like, oh, you can just take a break when a break is needed. Well, in medicine, burnout is so rampant. We know this is true in other hard driving professional fields like law and other things, but there's a lot of data in medicine because we have a lot of studies. But we don't want to necessarily take stock of our work life balance when we're in that burnout state. We want to be a little more proactive than that. And I am a great example of that. I was someone who was running on the treadmill of achievement as a resident. And of course, there's a time and a place that you do need to say yes to things and work hard. And that is the time. But I started having some non-specific symptoms, difficulties with even just motivation, had a deep depression that was kind of like an anhedonic depression where I didn't want to do anything. I had a lot of fatigue issues. And I was chalking it up to burnout, and I was still going, and I was still like making myself get up at 5 a.m. to try to do a workout and things like that before work. And I was like, this is not sustainable. I can't do this anymore. But at some point, I actually got a real diagnosis. I found out that I had a pituitary tumor. And
Hmm.
so with the book, with the lean out versus my story, I figured out that I really want people to not get to the place like I got where they have this full blown health crisis before they wake up and realize, well, am I actually happier if I say yes to all of these things? If I take on all of these roles, if I fill my plate with everything that is presented to me to do, because as part of the hedonic treadmill of achievement, the rewards as we go along and we achieve and we do more, and achievement really feels good. It's great, but the reward is more work. So
Yeah. That's right. The more you say yes, the more people come to you. It's true. And honestly, I feel like that book is written for people that are not in the medical profession because the people that go in the medical profession, that go through medical school and residency and fellowship, are generally hard driving people that want to take on responsibility, right? There's a certain personality, type A personality that goes into medicine usually. And we're not the people that need to be told to say more yes. And that's often what gets us in trouble with taking on too much on our plate. There are already so many pressures in medicine to do more and more and more, largely from, the corporate healthcare compound that wants us to work as hard as possible so they can build the most possible. And it's on us to actually not say yes, but say no. So Tell me more about how to say no, though, because it's very difficult
It
to do that.
is. It goes against our culture. And like you're saying, using the term lean in culture is an easy catch all term, but medicine culture is even a little bit different because it self selects for people that are altruistic, put themselves last, used to the delayed gratification, and really, in a lot of circumstances, want to help other people and put other people before themselves. And so there's the high achievement, high performance part, and then there's that other aspect, like you're saying. And so, yes, it is a difficult thing to do to focus on yourself because we feel like that's selfish. And
Yeah.
in some ways, too, if we show compassion for ourselves, it's somehow self indulgent. That's the way that a lot of people feel. So I try to turn that on its head in the talks that I give and in my book, saying that if you are not taking care of yourself first, if you're not paying attention to what you need, then you're not necessarily going to be effective as a physician, as a giver to other people, as all of the other roles that you have where you have to give to others, like being a mother, a father, a sibling, a spouse, those kinds of things. And so that is the argument that I make. And I also make the argument that if you wait too long, you may be suffering from problems that are more devastating, such as a health problem, such as a financial issue that is related to having to separate your marriage or something like that. I mean, we all know how expensive those kinds of problems can be. And since this is a finance podcast, we can talk a little bit about that. But the way that you have to go about, so first and foremost, go about going against this culture is learning about yourself. So the first place is to spend time with yourself. It's to, if you can, take some time off, which is difficult when you're a resident, but even small amounts of time that you can spend by yourself in stillness, cultivating some sort of mindfulness practice, which really doesn't have to look like meditation or perfect or anything like that. It just needs to be time that you spend by yourself, thinking about what your values are, thinking about what your vision for your work-life balance is, what your life is supposed to look like, and remembering that you are a person who is worthy of having a balanced life, of having a life that has the fulfillment aspects that you want, just simply by the fact that you're here. You don't have to earn any of that. And so remembering that you don't have to work and you don't have to achieve in order to have worthiness.
That is a really powerful statement. You don't have to work in order to have worthiness. I want to dive a little bit deeper into your burnout story and that time frame. Take us back to when you found out that this was a narrative in your head that you needed a change. Tell me about that time.
Well, before I even went to medical school, I had another career. I was an engineer, and there was something about the engineering lifestyle that I knew I didn't really want. And I had pinpointed that it wasn't geographically and time freedom oriented enough for me. And so I went into medicine seeking that freedom. And a lot of people who are in medicine are like, what? You actually went into medicine to have freedom? But I thought, well, in medicine, you can practice it anywhere you want, where I felt like I was pegged to geographical areas as an engineer. So if you go into petrochemicals, you've got to live in Houston or you've got to live in Louisiana. If you go into biotech, you have to live in California, those kind of things. So it depends on what you study. And so I was like, well, in medicine, you can practice anywhere. There are sick people. There's a need everywhere, even in other countries. And I was doing a lot of traveling at that time in my life. I was rock climbing all over the world with my husband. And so I wanted something where I could be of service and then use also my knowledge in science, but that I could do anywhere. And I knew if I chose the right specialty that I could also have chunks of time off if I wanted to. Like if I chose a certain kind of specialty like anesthesiology, for instance, where you can take a longer vacation because you don't have patients in clinic. And so I went into medicine with that vision in mind. And then when I got into residency, I actually started going down a path because I got on that treadmill of achievement where I was told I was super good at a very niche area of anesthesiology that involves ultrasound and echocardiography. And so I got on a path where if I had kept going, I would have been exactly in the place that I was when I was an engineer and I was in my 20s. And I was saying, like, I actually want more freedom, but I would have been pegged to be working in a very specific environment. It would have been like an academic city center type of a situation. And what woke me up to that was having this health problem. And so it was something that I had been, like I said, suffering with some non-specific symptoms that I thought were related to burnout. I actually was having trouble with fertility. I had sought the help of a fertility specialist because I also at the same time was turning in my mid 30s and decided I wanted to have a child. And so they were the people that actually really helped me figure out what was wrong with me. But I delayed my own diagnosis because I was busy. I didn't have time to go get the tests. I didn't have time to get the MRI that I needed. And it took months and months and months. And I finally got this. And so that combination of a self-care fail mixed with having an illness that made you stare mortality in the eyes was really what made me realize that I had gone off of the path that I really wanted, that vision of aligning my freedom values with what kind of work I was doing. And so at that point, I had a big surgery, I had ICU stays, I had recovery. I went back to residency and I finished, and then I did not do a fellowship. I did not sit for the perioperative echocardiography boards, and I just went into anesthesiology.
Wow. Wow. So you had an incredible illness that required brain surgery during residency. You got it done. You went back, you finished, and then, but it's so funny how you're telling me you didn't do a fellowship, but that is an incredible achievement, right? Because that most of the population would not have been able to get back in the game and get in like you did, right? And the fact that you were able to then realize and you had this mind-opening, eye-opening experience of having this tumor, realizing that you had failed in the self-care realm and then decided to turn it around. It's just so admirable. And I'm so very proud of you. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And how's your health now? Are you doing better? Is everything gone?
So I have to get surveillance MRIs of my pituitary area every 2 years, and I've been doing that. This is, let's see, how many years has it been since I had this tumor? It's been more than 10 years. I think it's been maybe 12 or 13 years. And so every couple of years I have to do that. And every time that I get the report that says that there's no new growth, I'm very grateful. It's a good reminder every time I have to go get in that scanner. And I have to take medications every day, multiple times a day, to replace my lost pituitary gland.
Right.
But it's really not that bad. I mean, it was something that when I first started out, I thought, oh, this is going to suck. And I was younger and I was like, I have to take all these pills now. It's like, I'm like an old lady. Well, here I am, it's better than the alternative. And I was really so grateful too that it was a benign tumor that was removable without a craniotomy. It was something that, even though I have to take medications for, was treatable, relatively treatable. And we have the technology to treat this. And so part of me too, at the time when I got this diagnosis, I was really in a period of deep self-hatred and comparison with my fellow residents and wondering why the heck I could not hack it and what was wrong with me. And academics were a little hard because I actually had blindness. And so I struggled with procedures for a little while before I had the surgery. And that did get better after I had my surgery, but I didn't know why. At the time I was just like, what is wrong? Because we're all used to being very good at what we do.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're suffering and you're struggling and people are like, what's wrong with you? And that was difficult. So I was hating on myself. And then once I had this diagnosis, I really turned that all around into self-compassion. And it really changed the way that I viewed myself and the way that I treat myself now.
How did you do that? How did you turn that self-hatred into self-compassion?
I can't say that there was some sort of active process. I think it was really just like that lightning bolt moment where you're like, oh my gosh, oh, how sad that this is going on. And, but yet how good it is that it's something that's treatable. Like I was saying, like that it's not the worst kind of brain tumor that you could get, which,
Right.
we all know there are other ones that are really bad and not operable and things like that. And it really helped me to just realize that I was going to be okay and that it was something that was a solvable problem. And the other thing I will say, though, I think the work comes in having time with yourself, like I was saying. And I had a lot of time during this period of recovery where I was by myself and I wasn't at work and I wasn't on that clock where you're like, I'm supposed to be the OR right now. When you are used to that and then you are forced to take time off, it can be a little difficult to separate yourself from that to-do list and like the little box that we had as interns. I mean, the list with the little
The checks.
boxes.
Still do it.
Like, yeah, right. So when you're not able to do that, you have your identity is just different. You have all of a sudden your identity is taken away from you, and it forces you to think about things. And so I spent a lot of time learning about mindfulness techniques, even during that time, like when I was recovering, reading books about mindfulness, reading books about personal development. That's really how I got into that area and how I started writing about it and speaking about it. And then eventually coaching on this stuff was by doing a lot of my own inquiry. And so there's not like a magic thing that you can do to make yourself turn from self-hatred to self-compassion. It's just this process of learning and of doing work that doesn't seem like it's related, but it is related, and it changes you over time.
Here's a question. What's the true cost of not having a plan for your finances? With Facet, you don't have to leave that to chance. With their flat fee membership model, Facet is building the future of financial planning. You'll get access to a team of certified financial planner professionals and guidance across tax planning, estate planning, and more. No commissions, no hidden costs, just expert advice that evolves with you. Take the next step in securing your financial future and check out which membership option is right for you. Visit facet.com/frugalphysician today. That's facet.com/frugalphysician.
So I recently took some time myself off for surgery, and I sat on that couch, when I had to, and faced some of these same questions. And I can't say I came out of it with a clear answer like you did, honestly, but I know that there's an answer to be had. But I like what you said about sitting with yourself and asking yourself the questions of what is it that I want, and also showing yourself compassion. I wonder, how was your relationship with your parents? A lot of the times these unwritten or these automatic ways that we speak to ourselves have been trained into us over time. So where do you think that negative talk came from?
I do think that while my parents did as good of a job as they could at the time, that they really instilled in me more of a fixed mindset. So the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is like when you're fixed mindset, you really rely on labels, and success is based on the outcome. It's not based on the effort. And the growth mindset is you can do anything you want. You can try anything new. You have the ability to learn new things and to develop new skills. And as opposed to the way that I grew up was like, you're smart, you're not good at sports, you're not going to be a dancer because you're 6 feet tall, that kind of like rigid labels.
Mhm.
And it was just always things that were said to me. You're really good at this, you're not good at this. And so I think they failed in that way, but they probably didn't really know. And some of this is generational and based on what is known in the parenting sphere at the time.
Yeah.
I really want to instill a growth mindset in my daughter, but I do think that made a difference. And so because of the labels of like you're smart and you're going to be good at this and you're great at math, you're great at verbal communication or whatever, those kind of things led me to seek approval from other people by doing well in those things.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I know that my mother is very into fitting in and not rocking the boat. And now all my life is about like, not, it's about like rocking the boat and doing stuff different. And, I go to a PRN job and people are like, well, what's your real job? What's your other job? I'm like, this is it. This is what I do. And they're like, huh? Like they look at you like a deer in the headlights. But, I feel like that's my purpose now. My purpose is to live by example, doing something unique in medicine and still being a professional. Like you can still do a profession, a job that people associate with a certain look and a certain schedule and not have that. My mom was always like, you should fit in, you need to like not stick out. I stuck out because like I was saying, I'm very tall. And so physically I stuck out. And so I feel like I was desperately trying to fit in. And I probably used academics in that way too, like to be
Mm.
accepted, do well, and then fit into that, whatever that community is of like high achieving people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like your book challenges that culture of like relentless achievement, right? Which can sometimes be tied into the growth mindset, really. But it's a little bit, I think growth mindset is a bit different. It's just that you're not cornering yourself as a relentless achiever. You're mostly just opening your mind to the possibility that you can learn new skills, you can continue to grow, you can continue to change. If things are not working for you, you stop, you turn, you can do that. Right.
Yeah.
And so, what advice do you have for people that are really high achievers, though, and don't want to stop, or turn, right? And who struggle to step away from this mindset of just relentlessly achieving?
Well, first of all, you have to recognize that you're doing that. And a lot of people don't necessarily recognize it until something bad happens. Like I was saying, they either
Yeah,
get sick, someone in their family gets sick, or like they start having marital problems or family issues or something like that,
yeah,
unfortunately. I mean,
right.
that's part of why I wrote the book. So people could see that perspective and be like, And I even have a section in there that's it says something about how entrenched are you on the treadmill of achievement? Do these things resonate with you? Do you derive your self-worth from your achievements? Are you very into your roles and your titles and things like that? And so recognizing it is the first thing. And then I would say that the next part is figuring out why. So you can ask yourself why over and over again. You can say something like, well, because I really enjoy my work. Well, why do you enjoy your work? And then you can just keep going with the whys. Like it's a common coaching technique to do like 5 whys in a row. And also figuring out why you think the things that you do, where did it come from? So I call that in the book the rules. So they're unwritten rules that you're following that aren't necessarily the rules like you have to stop at the stop sign. They're not necessarily true rules that we have to follow. They might be just rules that you made up in your head and that have to do with your culture, have to do with your upbringing or where you work or the kind of field that you chose, your specialty in medicine or a particular area of finance that you're studying or that you work in and those kind of things.
Give
Yeah,
us an example,
examples.
yeah, of an unwritten rule that you came
Yeah.
across with a
Okay.
coaching patient.
So yes, this happens commonly. Would be a rule would be like, in order to be a good doctor, I need to be the first one in the office, for instance, or I need to see X number of patients every day, and if I don't, then I'm not. I'm
Right.
not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That would be the kind of rule I'm talking about. Or I can't rearrange my schedule to take this vacation because I can't ask for something out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I'm sure that's gone through my head a couple of times too.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and so to challenge those unwritten rules in our heads, and the way we come across them is by asking ourselves those questions: Why do I think this? Right,
Mhm.
and we can't have that conversation unless we're sitting with ourselves and actually talking to ourselves, right? Or
Yeah, I mean,
in
so
our
you can do it by yourself, right? And the book is helpful in leading you in certain ways and also talking about the thought traps that we sometimes fall into, like all or nothing thinking, or like having a fixed mindset, or having guilt about one of these unwritten rules. So there's a whole section about that. And then, sometimes you do need to ask for help, though, I will say. So I think starting with spending time with yourself is very important, but sometimes you do need the help of an objective third party. You
Mhm.
can have a coach. There might be a mentor that is helpful to you. It could be a family member, but I think objective third party is an important key term there.
Yeah. And that's the role of coaching. It's to help you go through these questions with yourself and really go through these exercises where you're trying to get down to the bottom of what it is that you really want and then figuring out how to achieve it, right?
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of that and you've made some significant lifestyle changes from homeschooling to off the grid living. How have these decisions impacted your personal fulfillment, and would you do it again?
Yes, absolutely. I have a deep core value of, we talked about freedom, but also challenge. And I really like variety. I think that's part of why I chose anesthesiology. I like having a real varied group of patients and not necessarily all kids or all women or something like that. I really like that you go in and you really don't know what you're going to get until you get there.
Mhm.
And so I live my life in that way too. I have really a big amount of variety in my life. Sometimes I'm on service and I've got a busy, 10 or 12-hour day and I'm working in the hospital and it's very intense. And then on off weeks, I'm looking at math with my daughter and then like going for a walk on our property and taking care of chickens. And then sometimes I'm coaching people, I'm recording podcast episodes and interviewing people like you. And it's just super fun to have the variety. I love that part of my life. And I would say that also I like new things that are difficult. I never really embraced challenge as a young adult or even like a teenager. Like I was saying, it was always about like, how good do I look? How cool do I look? Am I achieving? And now I really enjoy trying new things, learning new things. And so this homestead stuff is all brand new to us. Like neither my husband nor I grew up on a farm. We didn't grow up on any kind of like rural environment at all. And so we are just doing it and we're failing in the process and it's okay. And it's super fun and exhilarating to be learning something new.
What are some challenges you've come across? I'm sure this is also a dream of mine to just have a homestead or farm or something and just like do something different. There's a lot of fear that holds me back though, because I feel like there's a lot we haven't learned. Have you come across anything that's just been like a big challenge?
Well, it's expensive. I will say that. And since we're on a financial podcast, and sometimes you have these mistakes that you're like, oh, that was just a few $1,000s right there. But, so like examples would be buying a backhoe, and we bought one initially that was a lemon. And so that cost us a bunch of money because we had to get rid of it. And then we have like a new thing that is in this place. We one time we didn't leave our propane valve open, but snow load, we didn't leave it covered. And so then there was a big snow load and it turned one of our valves and like emptied, thousands of dollars of propane
Oh, geez.
just into the air. So like we left and then came back to an empty propane tank. Our solar system had to be redone and we didn't do that ourselves. We hired someone to do that. But it's a complicated thing. You do have to understand it if you want to troubleshoot it. I definitely rely on my husband for some of the more mechanical things. But some of the stuff like we planted things in a garden from seed. And so that was a humbling process because one year we did it, we didn't get anything, like nothing grew. Then the next year we did it, we made some changes and then read a little bit more, did a little more research, tried to fortify the soil in a different way. And then some stuff grew, but it was like the garden it was like all tomatoes. So nothing, that there was no variety, that kind of thing. But it's super fun. And now we're starting to get into animals. We bought chickens, and so we're taking care of chickens for the first time, and that's different, but it's been very fun. I love them. I am a chicken lady now, and I never thought that I would be a chicken lady.
So, like talking about finances, let's go back to that.
Mhm.
You had this awakening during residency, during your training. How did you make achieving balance work financially? Like you're working per diem now. How do you make that work financially?
I'm really glad you asked this. There is not a magic bullet that I can point to besides unsexy things like living way below our means. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we did. My husband and I had humble beginnings as rock climbers, and we know how to live on little. We have lived in other countries and come across people that basically have a job that is only a part of the year, like they're a ski bum or they do school photography for, like September and April, and the rest of the year they climb and they live on that. And so we had seen examples of this. And for a long time, I think we knew how to save. And my husband is an attorney, and so he has a high income potential, but he also stepped off the treadmill of achievement and started his own micro practice quite a while ago. But it is a very low overhead practice. So when he has a good year, he has a good year. And for me, I have a good earning potential as well, but I've always worked part time. We just save a lot of what we make and we put them into our retirement funds, and we haven't, so basically it's not like any super real estate investment or something like that that made us a bunch of money and made us financially independent. I mean, we really just did it the slow way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we're all about here, right? Living below our means.
Yeah.
Now, do you work as a when you do your weeks on? Are you working as a contractor, 1099?
I actually have a combination. So when I do locums, I do 1099. And then I have a regular per diem job that I chose to do W-2 for various reasons. Mathematically, it probably is a wash. And that's why I chose W-2, because it makes it very much more simple for my brain space to not have to deal with a malpractice policy, which can be quite expensive in the state that I practice in. But with the W-2, they cover my malpractice insurance, and they actually did have some benefits that were helpful to me, like the ability for me to do a 401k. Doesn't have
Mhm.
matching, but that's okay. And I also, in the place where I have that job, I already had a residence that was already paid off. So there's not a lot of expenses. It's only getting there. And so that was another reason why I chose W-2. So I have a combination. I do 1099 when I do locums in other locations, and then my regular PRN job that I do about once a month, 1 week a month, I do W-2.
Okay, wonderful. So you have the 401k, then you probably also have a solo 401k space for your 1099 gig
Yeah,
and this podcast. You carry your own disability insurance, I'm guessing?
I don't have disability insurance. So
Ah,
I was definitely tried to. I was sold it when I was a resident, and I said no at the time. And again, this is also coming from having a husband, and I know that there's nothing guaranteed, right? But who was making a decent wage, and we
mhm.
decided to put it off. And then guess what happened? I got cancer. Well, I
Right,
can't get disability insurance anymore.
right.
So I think if I had gone back, that's something that I would have done differently, because you never know what can happen. I mean, obviously, people get divorced, and trying to hang my hat on my husband's salary wasn't necessarily a good idea, but I can't undo this now. It just, I got that diagnosis too early in the game, and just didn't buy the disability insurance on time.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, like most trainees have no idea why disability insurance is important. Like you were young, and unfortunately, now they can discriminate, based on medical history to provide disability insurance, which is really terrible. But anyway, we won't get into the insurance world and the ethics there because there's a lot to talk about. But tell us a little bit more about how you cover yourself financially, just from the insurance end. Are there any other insurances that you carry?
We have an umbrella insurance for our
Mhm.
property, and we have some sort of a regular property policy. We have our auto policies, and that's pretty much it. We don't have any other kind of life insurance. We are at this point financially independent, and
Nice.
so we haven't bought any other kind of things for catastrophic situations.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it sounds like you are able to self-insure a lot of it, so that helps. And it's always fascinating to me just to see how other people make things work. And the way that you're living your life is just so. It sounds amazing. So I know a lot of people will benefit from you sharing. So thank you for doing that. Now let's wrap today up with a rapid fire segment that I like to end with, just to get to know the quirky side of you a little bit. Does that sound okay?
Okay, sure.
All right. What's one daily habit that keeps you grounded?
I often take a bath and I do it at night. And I love spending a little bit of time by myself in quietness in there.
Mm.
It depends on where I am because we don't have baths at every single location that we live. But when I have a chance, I do that regularly, like every single night before I go to bed. I'm a really cold person. I run really cold and I love to get heated in there. And it also really puts me in that relaxation mode.
Next question, yoga or hiking? Which one would you prefer?
That's a hard question. I'm going to choose neither one because I have really been focusing right now on strength training. So to choose between the three, strength training would be my choice because while I used to do a ton of yoga and a ton of hiking, when I turned 50, I started adopting a regular habit of strength training and I have seen changes in my body and I have gotten stronger. I have gained some muscle mass. And I feel like as I get older, this is very important. I don't
Yes.
want to be one of those people that can't get off the toilet and that, can't pick themselves up after they take a fall. And so being a little bit on the older side, I've been focusing on that area.
I think that's fantastic. I totally agree. Strength training, the stabilizing muscles, that does so much for your joints and helps protect your joints from injury, even going forward. And of course, yoga does too. It helps protect your ligaments, but like those bones are super important, and that's what training does in the muscles that it builds. So totally agree with that. What's a book or a podcast that inspired your journey? Next question.
Hmm. Inspired in the past, I don't know. I mean, I listen to a ton of podcasts
Hmm.
and I read various books, but I would say that my area of reading is usually personal development. You know what? I'm going to say a book that's called From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. That was a book that I read maybe a year ago or so. And that book is excellent. It really talks about how as you get older, you need to adapt and not always be on the curve of basically like the treadmill of achievement of
Hmm.
innovating and being better and better and better in your field because eventually you're going to suck at your field. Like eventually everyone starts to lose it a little bit. And so then you need to jump onto a train where you're helping others, advocating for others, teaching, mentoring, and doing that sort of stuff. And I really liked the premise of that book. And there's a lot of really helpful exercises for people to go through for personal development too in there.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out. Thank you.
Hmm.
Last one. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I've been asked this before, and the thing I always say is get the MRI. And what I mean by that is when I was ill and I didn't know it, a physician said to me, we should really look for functional tumors in your brain. And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. And I haven't, my deductible is too high and this thing is going to be $2,000 and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to get it. And I put it off for like almost a year. And that was the thing that would have, if I had known that sooner, would things be different somehow? Maybe.
Mhm.
So basically what that means, get the MRI as far as advice goes, is don't ignore symptoms that you have and don't not go to the doctor and don't not get your screening tests and things that you need to stay healthy.
Absolutely. Listen, there's plenty of people here that can't in this country that can't afford their medical bills, but doctors are not one of them,
Yeah,
right? Don't get into that scarcity mindset. Don't be frugal with your own health.
absolutely.
We we can, because that is the most costly thing in the end. That's a cheap move, right? Make sure you're doing your routine healthcare. I think this is a very good reminder of not putting our own selves off, and I've been guilty of that in the past as well.
Mm.
Trying to mold my healthcare schedule into and make it work with my work schedule, whatever, and delaying things. Like, don't do that. It only hurts you and, inhibits your progress going forward. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast means you are interested in growth, you're interested in self-care. So make sure this is your daily reminder to get that screening test.
Yeah.
And do your mammograms, do your colonoscopies on schedule. All right. Finally, Dr. Baker, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more from you?
Yes. So everything is available at my website. It's a long-standing website that I've had. I started it as a blog 10 years ago. It's called practicebalance.com. And there is a link to purchase my book. There is a link to all the podcast episodes. I still do blog posts, but they're usually related to the podcast episodes, occasionally not. And I also have an upcoming, starting in January 2025, course that is all about confidence, because a lot of the clients that I get for coaching, the one thing that they really want, the goal that they have, is to cultivate the confidence to go out and change their work-life balance and ask for that unique schedule or step down from a role or something like that. And so I developed a video self-guided course, and you can get on the interest list for that. I don't have a launch date yet, but it will be pretty soon. And the interest list is, to get on the list, it's practicebalance.com/LOCC for Lean Out Confidence course.
Dr. Baker, thank you so much for this reminder that relentless achievement can be like a drug. It is dopamine driven, right? And yes, we get lots of hits of dopamine when we achieve, but remember to sit down with yourself and ask yourself if this is actually what's going to make you happy and if you can sustain this level of achievement. If you can, fantastic. Keep going for it, keep growing, keep doing the things. But if you're finding yourself a little bit stretched thin, if you sit down with yourself and realize that maybe there's something that needs to change, this is your reminder to make that change, that you are able to change. That's what makes us growth centered, right? That's what makes us humans that can achieve. And that is an achievement in itself when you can attain that balance like Dr. Baker has. And while we are all capable of juggling 5,000 balls in the air, sometimes stillness is all we need. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you, Dr. Baker, for all of your wisdom. Make sure you check out Practice Balance and grab a copy of her book, Lean Out, A Professional Woman's Guide to Finding Authentic Work-Life Balance. If you get a chance, listen to her podcast at the Lean Out Podcast. And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with someone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for tuning in to Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician, where we inspire you to design a life of freedom, balance, and joy. Until next time, take care and stay frugal, y'all.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.